Mr. Maravich, don't I read you first? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Let's introduce the
Swearing in.
swearing in.
Oh,
of new members.
Judge Parisi. Would you like to do this at your places? Might be easier if I move around, or do you want to do it?
I think we typically do it at the podium.
Okay. Face first. And what I'll do with each of these is I'll give each of you your form to let you take it and sign it, and then I'll collect them and I'll sign when we're done with everybody, if that's okay.
Great.
Okay. You place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I
I,
state your name.
Ed Case,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey,
that I will support and obey
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth.
and the
Constitution.
Constitution of this Commonwealth,
And that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know you were coming up. Okay, you're going to sign, well, where it has your name, and then I'll come around and get them. Okay? I have, looks like Dr. Kennedy. Maybe I should ask since I messed it up with the
No,
last one.
I didn't bring
Okay.
anybody today.
You'd place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand.
Okay.
I, your name,
Amy Kennedy,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and Miss, is it pronounced Coker? Okay, Cocker. And are you swearing or affirming?
Affirming, I guess.
Okay. I,
I,
state your name,
Stephanie Cocker,
do affirm
do affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of this Commonwealth,
of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Mr. McCrae. I pronounced that one correctly. Oh, 3 out of 4. Brought their own Bible. Very good. I,
I,
your name,
Sean McCrae,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey,
obey,
and defend
and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And then I'll go around and collect.
Roll call, please. Oh, real quick, congratulations to the 4 of you.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mrs. Casper?
Here.
Dr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mrs. Cocker,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. McCray,
Here.
Mr. Negrini,
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the pledge to the flag. Mr. Maravich, we do have public participation on agenda items. Would you like to give your statement?
Sure. Pursuant to the Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules, and Board Policy, the following are the rules of public participation. Individuals attending these meetings are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answer, but instead is an opportunity to offer comments on matters that are or may come before the board. Comments should be directed to the board as a whole. Clapping, calling out, or cheering by the audience is not permitted, nor are conversations in the audience. Individuals may not approach the board tables at any time. Individuals shall make comments from the speaker's podium. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per individual. Any person making threats of violence may be removed from the meeting and may be cited by local police. The above expectations are outlined in Board Policy 903, which is on the district's website within board docs.
Mrs. Cocker, do you have the slips?
Mrs. Carroll? First, Lisa Marie Stonaha, Board Elections.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, I wanted to start by just thanking you for your leadership on our board. While we may not have always agreed, you've always represented yourself in this board in a professional and calm manner, and it is greatly appreciated. So thank you for your service. In my line of work, I have the great opportunity of working with all types of leaders all throughout the world. And one of the things that I've learned through these experiences is that no matter who the leadership group is or where they're located, when you ask them to define what makes a great leader, there's a few things that top the list every single time. It's good listening skills, good communication skills, and they demonstrate empathy. When they describe this leader, it's clear that this leader has what is called emotional quotient, or EQ. For a long period of time, it was thought that those with a high IQ made great leaders, and so that's how leaders were determined: high IQ, leadership position. But what they found is IQ alone does not make you a great leader. There are additional skills needed, and those skills aligned with the definition of a great leader: listening, communication, and empathy. Upon discovering this, when they changed their approach to move those with high EQ into leadership positions, the results were astounding. Teams were happier, more productive, more efficient, and achieved more results. What they found is that in leadership, EQ matters a lot. Tonight, you have the opportunity to bring this very divided community back together. In the past few months, many of you have taken the time to truly listen. You've taken patience, and you seek to understand and communicate with everyone in the community and demonstrated great leadership. Unfortunately, some of you have not, and some have instead decided to scold our community, make false accusations, call names, and attempt to discredit those that take the time to get up here and speak to all of you. And that's not leadership. I truly believe that every one of you bring value to this board. But when you continue to demean the community, that value is hard to see and understand, and your message is lost. As you make your decision tonight, I ask that you please vote for those that have demonstrated these strong leadership skills. This is the kind of leadership we truly need right now, and this is what's going to help bridge the community.
1 minute.
I ask that you not further divide our community by rewarding bad leadership. By voting in the most divisive board members into leadership positions, you are making a clear statement to the community, whether you mean to or not. Please elect those that have listened, that have demonstrated empathy and communicated in a professional and respectful manner. Please elect those that will bring our community back together and not further divide our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy Keener, Agenda LEP.
Can I ask a question before I even start this? Everyone placed their left hand on the Bible except for you, Ms. Cocker. Is there any reason why you omitted the
Mrs. Keener?
Bible?
Mrs.
in
Keener,
your-
we can't
There-
do that.
There's not like pre-3 minutes, so you got to take your 3
Well,
minutes.
I'm just wondering. She was the only one that didn't touch the Bible.
We're not-
It
Mrs.
truly,
Keener,
truly
we're not-
means a lot to me.
Mrs. Keener, I understand. but we
Okay,
cannot direct
I'm
you to
going
that.
on the fact that, Mr. Hart, yes, we were blessed to have you for the 2 years that we did. You have a very even-keeled manner. You've got great leadership skills. You are exactly what we needed for our president for the last 2 years. There are some here, and I wasn't at the last board meeting, but I'm going to speak my mind tonight on what has happened to me since the election. I have been called out by a school board member. She sits on this board. I've been called a dumbass. Tammy Keener doesn't have a clue of what she's talking about. She also lied to my dear elderly neighbor, who I have taken care of for 2 years since her husband passed, to get her to dislike me. And for one known reason, I have no idea why. She lied to her by saying she has no intention of raising taxes. And in the second breath, you want to spend in the upward of $50 million, raising our taxes 38% over the next 5 years. This board member has also honestly defamed my name. If I wanted to be an ugly woman, I could get her for defamation of character because my neighbor is furious. I took care of her. I held her hand when her husband passed. I fed her. I took care of her family. I have compassion. Obviously, this board member should not be in a leadership skill. In fact, I don't even think she should be sitting on this board after what she did to me. So when you choose and when you vote tonight, I ask you to vote for the ones that did work with us in the community. My God calls me to love my neighbor and to take care of our widows, which is exactly what I did. Obviously, this board member thinks of nothing but herself. So with that, I'm grateful, Mr. Martin, especially for you.
Thank you.
Gwen Hill, Board Reorganization.
It's another big night out for me, so, but I'm going to make this short and sweet because I actually have Buffalo's defense going in fantasy tonight, and they get me lots of points. So, anyway, first of all, Mr. Hart, thank you very much. You did a great job. Basically, you're all just about to restructure, reorganize positions. Please consider electing or voting for board members for leadership roles that can actually work with this community. Several of you have taken the time to listen and ask questions. We may not always agree, but maybe one day we can. But I was just happy to get a response because a lot of you just don't respond and you have some negative things to say. Several others of you have called us names, insulted us, and acted unprofessionally. I don't believe you should be on this board, let alone in a leadership role. Regarding the election, I personally, and this is the school board election, I personally, don't care for mail-in voting, but that's just me. But if you looked at the poll voting, the 3 write-in candidates nearly pulled off the impossible. I hope that shows you that this community is still very divided. I personally have gotten up here several times to explain that to you myself. You've called us the loud minority. I don't believe that to be true at all. If you would like to have less conflicting Monday nights again, I suggest putting board members into leadership roles who will actually try to work with this community, not insult the community. Another way to get less people in this room is to embrace transparency, respect parent input and parent choice. One way to do that is to free our children's faces, let them breathe freely if they choose to. Otherwise, the behavior and developmental issues will continue to climb. Make masks optional. If you choose, if you do that, you'll see less of my smiling face. That's for sure. What you when you refer to us as the loud minority, it's really not true at all. It's actually the pissed off majority. Think about that before you accept a leadership role on this board. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dwight Wegman, Board Governance.
Good evening. Thanks for the time. Now that the election is over, it's time for all of us to ask the question, where do we go from here? Some will view the incumbent's victory as a mandate to continue the current course. However, that hardly begins to tell the story. The fact that 3 write-in candidates could garner almost 10,000 votes in the community in just an 8-week campaign is a strong indicator that many in the community are unhappy with the leadership of this administration and board. If this board is interested in representing the entire community, you need to adopt a different philosophy in your governance. My observation is that the majority of this board have operated in what I call a win-lose mentality. If you're on the winning side of a vote, you're happy, and if you're not, well, that's tough, just too bad. That approach just fosters division in the community and does nothing to bring us together. An honest assessment of the election results indicates that you preside over a very divided community. Write-in candidacies rarely have a serious chance of winning. 11,000 write-in votes in this election is the community sending you a strong message. It's time for you to listen. So what is the message? Number 1, get the politics out of the curriculum. When documented examples of political agendas and ideologies are presented to this board, do not dismiss them out of hand or deny the obvious or hide behind policy in dealing with them. You need to address it promptly. When you dismiss these examples or deny there are political agendas in certain classes, you insult the community and further the division. Mr. Martin's suggestion of neutrality training for staff, faculty, and the board is sorely needed. Number 2, get your spending under control. Spending $40 million to expand the high school auditorium and update sports fields when building materials are at an all-time high is just irresponsible. I worked the polls on election day and was approached by an elderly couple.
1 minute.
They told me that their budget is already stretched and they don't know how to deal with more tax increases. And now we have the general inflation everywhere. They are not alone. Undisciplined spending and raising taxes to fund it is poor governance. This board is focused on equity. So I ask you, is that an equitable outcome for this couple? In conclusion, this pandemic has wreaked havoc on the education of our children. Helping our children recover the lost ground is where the community wants you to put your focus. This board and administration have focused on peripheral issues that have nothing to do with basic education. It's time to return to the basics at Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chastity Santiago, leadership vote.
All right, so I'm going to start out with a quote here. Maya Angelou famously wrote, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." The 11,000 write-in votes should give all of you on this board an idea of how you've made these parents and myself feel. But yet you continue with your dysfunctional operations. I mean, last meeting I watched you all vote yes on a contract or a policy where there were known typos, known errors, referencing a county in California as it relates to sending test results for our children. I don't understand the lack of professionalism on that one, and also the ill regard for your fellow board members who you're voting on a policy or a situation that they have no knowledge about or time to peruse. The lack of utter disrespect for your board members and just aren't our children worth correcting a copy and paste error before you go take a vote? I'll tell you what, I tried that on my boss. She made me go change Yugoslavia back to Canada when I had a typo. She wouldn't sign the contract, which makes it ridiculous that any of you could sign that. As a leader in my business, I'm flabbergasted at the actions and of this board itself. You've adopted this directive leadership approach, but yet you promote an equality policy or an equity policy that's focused on transformational leadership. None of you have exhibited transformational leadership to inspire our children. You are using a tactic of motivation, and everyone knows who is in an industry or any type of freaking political place or just a business itself knows you can't throw resources at a problem and expect long-term gains of sustainability. You threw a policy out, oh, that's great, it has butterflies and rainbows. Where's the metrics? Where's the goals? Where's the problems we're trying to solve? None of you could provide metrics on it. Nobody had any numbers. And yet you're all just sit here and you vote. Well, except a couple
1
of you
minute.
who voted against it. You know, I leave you with this. A true leader would understand all of this. None of you have recognized that, well, except for maybe 2 who voted no. But your short-term efficiency goals and lack of vision and foresight is the reason for the resistance. You govern like, you know, you own everything. Well, you don't. I'm here to tell you. The problem isn't inequity. The problem is involvement, inspiration. You can throw books at these children's faces, and if they don't want to learn, it's not going to happen. So you take resources from our community, from our elderly citizens. For what? You have no plan. You know, I was a student here. I came back here. I have traveled around the globe in my business. Came back here so my son could have a quality education, because that's what I had. You know, I had to read a lot of books while I was here. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that's the same case for my son. One of my quotes that stuck with me throughout the years is, what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you get by, you know, by getting to that goal. You gotta be somebody, it's gotta mean something.
Please wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no more names, President Hart.
Mrs. Carroll, do we have any communications?
No, sir.
Thank you. We did meet in executive session before the meeting tonight to discuss real estate. Ms. Maravich and board, I'd like to appoint Mr. Jay Negrini to be the president pro temp for election of the president.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. The purpose of this nomination is solely to seek the nominations from this board for the next board president, and then conduct a vote on those nominations. So at this time, I open up the floor for nominations for this year's board president. Mr. Hart.
Sorry about that. I'd like to nominate Steph Cocker.
Is there a second to that nomination? Dr. Kennedy. Are there any other nominations for board president at this time?
I'd like to nominate Sean McCray.
Is there a second to that nomination for Mr. McCray? Are there any other nominations for board president at this time? Hearing none, at this point, in the order that it was taken, if we could have a vote at this time for board president nomination being Steph Cocker. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
No?
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Mr. McCray?
Abstain.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain.
The votes carry, then Mrs. Cocker is this year's board president. Congratulations.
I would just like to take a minute to thank President, or Mr. Hart, for the past 2 years of working together as board leadership. I've learned a lot as his second hand, and I hope to emulate his calm demeanor in his leadership role as we move forward for this year. So, and thank you for the votes of confidence from my fellow board members.
Congratulations.
2.3, nomination and election of vice president.
I'd like to nominate Sean McCray.
I'd like to nominate Bob
Oh,
Schneider.
Second, is there
I'm
a
sorry.
second nominee, a second for Sean McCray? Okay, first and second for Mr. McCray. Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Bob Schneider.
Okay, Bob Schneider, do I hear a second?
Second.
A second. Any other nominations? Okay, so we will go in the order of which they're nominated. First, Mr. McCray, we have a roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
No.
Mrs. Casper?
No.
Dr. Kennedy?
No.
Mrs. Cocker?
No.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Abstain.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Abstain.
Three yes, 4 no, 2 abstain.
Okay, so then we move on to the second nomination, Mr. Schneider. Have a voice, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Abstain.
Okay, I have 7 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain.
Okay, so congratulations to Mr. Schneider for vice president. .4, nomination and election of the superintendent's administrative assistant to serve as the board secretary. B, nomination and election of the assistant superintendent's administrative assistant to serve as the substitute board secretary. And Part C, nomination and election of the director of board relations to serve as a substitute board secretary. Do we need to do individual votes for all 3 of those? Okay. So voice vote for 2.4? Yes. Make a motion. Mr. Hart, second. Dr. Kennedy, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. 2.5, request approval that the board secretary's salary be set at $0. Do I have a first?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, do I have a second? Mr. Hart? Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
2.6, request approval of the retention of John Moravich Esquire and Fox Rothschild LLP as solicitor for 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Negrini.
Okay, second.
Case, second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
And Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
2.7, approve setting the solicitor's retainer fee for 2022 at $10,000 with hourly rates of $190 per hour for attorney time and $210 to $225 per hour for special services. This represents no change in fees and rates. Do I have a first?
So moved, Negrini.
Second?
Schneider, second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
2.8, request continuation in force of present Wilson School District policies. A first?
Schneider?
And a second? Mr. Hart? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
2.9, request appointment of all non-officers of the school board as assistant secretaries for the Wilson Board of School Directors. Consent vote, so President Hart first, second. Mr. Schneider? Okay, we're going to do a voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 3.1, request to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on November 15th, 2021 as attached. Do I have a first? Dr.
So-
Kennedy? Second?
Case?
Mr. Case? Voice vote, please. Or all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. 4.1, Mr. Martin?
Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight bills in the amount of $3,278,375.26.
Do I have a first?
That was first.
Oh, sorry, just kidding. Do I have a second? Mr. Hart? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Fadley?
Thank you, President Cocker. This evening, I present the personnel and program recommendations as listed.
Okay, do I have a first?
McCray?
Mr. McCray, second?
Second case?
Voice vote? Roll call? Oh, any comments? Yes.
I threatened Ms. Charity that I was going to vote no on this. We're losing a huge part of our Wilson School District that I'm not sure anybody out of Berkshire Heights knows how important she is as a preschool teacher. She had 3 out of the 4 of the Kennedys. She has the Cases. Miss Charity is just the best. I've known her for 25 years now, since I first started teaching at Whitfield, when she worked at the child care at Whitfield, when it was really almost like full-day preschool, because they ran half-day child care, and her room was just like being in preschool. I bring in kindergarten again, and she was there since the beginning of Berkshire Heights. She's been a teacher. She's phenomenal. She's one of those natural teachers that just knows what she's doing. And Berkshire Heights is just losing a giant of a preschool teacher. And I'm so sad that she's gone, and I don't know who's going to fill in her shoes, because she went above and beyond every single day. And I'm happy for her that she's going to North Carolina, but I still would rather vote no on this for sure.
Any other comments?
I'll just second that sentiment. Obviously, Isabel went through there as well, and she will be sorely missed, so best of luck to her in North Carolina.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Reluctantly, yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
6.1, request to accept with gratitude the donations as presented. From Emily Patton on behalf of Dollar General Stores, various office supplies at Shiloh Hills Elementary School, And from Darian Hawkins, 10 complete Thanksgiving dinners for families in the Wilson School District. Do I have a first
Schneider?
and a second? Oh, Dr. Kenny, thank you. Any comments?
Mrs. Cocker, I'd like to just say a thank you to the continued generosity that comes to us each board meeting from members of our community. But I do know that the 10 complete Thanksgiving dinners from Darian Hawkins were much appreciated throughout the district.
Mrs. Cocker, I would just point out that Mr. Hawkins, not only his contribution to the Wilson School District, but he did this for several school districts throughout Berks County. So very generous of him and very much appreciated.
Any other comments? Okay, voice vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. 7.1, request approval of the attached contract with Finer Sports Medicine Services Incorporated to provide athletic trainer services at our middle schools until a full-time athletic trainer is hired. Do I have a first? Mr. Hart, second?
Casper?
Ms. Casper? Roll call, please. Oh, any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
8.1, request approval of the legal services consultation agreement with Fox Rothschild LLP to provide services during the 2021-2022 school year as attached. Members of the Fox attorney staff, as are available and are acceptable to the district, will provide telephone and electronic mail advice and opinions concerning special education, NCLBA compliance, student services, and student civil rights issues pertinent to the district in particular. Such opinions shall be provided to the administration or administrators designated by the district as the contact. Fees remain the same. 8.2, request approval of the attached affiliation agreement with Lebanon Valley College to provide an unpaid internship for one or more of its speech-language pathology program students for the spring of 2022. 8.3, request approval of the affiliation agreement between Alvernia University and Wilson School District for placement of special education teaching students for an unpaid internship position. Do I have a first?
Schneider?
Mr. Schneider, second?
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
9.1, request permission to add the new board president as an authorized signatory for lease agreements with Dell Financial Services. I have a first. Mr. Hart, second. Dr. Kennedy? Oh, sorry, Mr. Gray. Any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
10.1, request approval of the updated 2021-2022 handbook for the Wilson School Age Childcare Program as attached. Do I have a first?
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, second.
Case second.
Mr. Case, any comments?
Mr. President, I think as written, it's, prior to COVID, it would be fine. The way it's written, there's a part about vaccination and immunizations, which I believe is not appropriate for this particular policy because it references back to this advisory committee on immunizations. Well, that committee is once again an advisory committee that reports to the CDC. The problem with that is they've already advised that children from 5 on up get the immunization for COVID. As the policy is written, we will require those students to have that immunization, which I think is not the intent of this policy. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but as written, I don't think it's acceptable because I don't think it's the intent of this board to require immunizations. of the students. I think, first of all, it's not a law. I'm not sure how we can enforce that. But I just want to make sure that you understand that's an advisory committee to the CDC president. And I think it's very dangerous to start accepting recommendations. These are all recommendations. These are not law, and putting them into our policies. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, there are some that are required by law, though, if I'm correct, right? And
That is
you're-
correct, Steve.
You're
Yes.
okay with the
Oh,
ones that
yes,
are
yes,
currently?
certainly,
Okay,
certainly.
I'm just clarifying.
So I guess my question is, Mr. Martin, does it specifically say that the students are required to have COVID vaccines in
Yes.
the?
Yes.
It specifically says in the
In-
handbook?
If you open it up, it says that they will, hold on, let me back, open it up again.
I read the same thing. It says that we will follow whatever this advisory
yes.
board says.
Okay, so I'm on page 6 of 15, immunizations. The Department of Human Services states that the faculty or the facility shall require the parent to provide updated written verification from a physician, physician's assistant, CRNP, the Department of Health, or a local health department of ongoing vaccines administered to a child in accordance with the schedule recommended by the ACIP, so the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. So I'm not a health expert, but it's according to the schedule recommended. I'm not sure if COVID has been added to the recommended schedule yet.
It has.
For children under 5?
No, from 5 on up.
But this is,
I know this but I'm just saying, there could be 5-year-olds that aren't going to kindergarten. So what I'm saying is, I don't think we want to go down this road, because this is going to be a problem. If we mandate it for that group, I think there could be an issue. And I understand, right now, there's no formula for children under 5 that's been approved. It's just from 5 on up, but this leads us down the wrong path.
It's,
Dr. Bailey, go ahead.
yes, if I could interject. The rules that govern childcare and the rules that govern public school systems are different. So my recommendation is that we would follow the Department of Human Services vaccine recommendations as prescribed by the Department of Human Services, which are communicated by the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices at the state level.
I'm looking here, first it said, Mrs. Cocker, that they just need a list of the ones that they've gotten. It doesn't say they won't be allowed in the childcare without the list, right?
Right, it
So
says,
secondly, there's lots on here that some parents opt not to get. For example, the flu vaccine is on there, and they're not going to say no to a child to go, you don't have the flu vaccine. There's other ones that the children have to be older to get, like the meningococcal meningitis and the HPV. They don't get that till they're 12. So there's some on this list that that are not appropriate for that age group.
so I guess what you're saying, Dr. Kennedy, is the wording doesn't say that they are required to have all of the vaccines on the schedule. It's just that they are required to provide updated written verification of the ones that they have received.
I'm not sure that's how I'm reading that, but maybe somebody that has a better legal background than myself can answer that question.
Well, if I may,
Yes.
is there any harm then, given the great discussion on this particular topic, to put this on hold, to have our solicitor review to make sure that there is no discrepancies or doubts as far as what is or is not required of our children entering our child care programs, our preschool programs, so that we alleviate any concerns of what is required by law and what is recommended by advisory committees or otherwise. So given this discussion and the great concerns of potentially going down a slippery slope, I would make a motion to put this particular agenda item on hold for further review and get some feedback at a later date.
I would second that.
Okay.
Mrs. Cocker, if I might suggest that we bring this back on December 20th after the legal department has had a chance to clearly articulate with the board the ASIP requirements for child care programs from the Department of Human Services. I think that would be advisable.
And I'll be glad to look at it. I do not know it off the top of my head. I mean, I know where you look for the vaccine list for PDE, but not for childcare. So.
Yeah, I think it needs a little bit of research.
Okay. So we have a first and second to readdress this this recommendation at the next board meeting. Do we need to vote on?
Yes, I think that by December 20th, we should have information to share with the board and clarify the language as is written by ASIP and the Department of Human Services.
Okay. A roll call on that motion?
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, we have no updates in policies. So committee reports. Berks County BCTC, Mrs. Casper?
I have no report. Our next meeting is December 9th.
Okay, Student Services, Mrs. Casper?
Yes, we met on Wednesday, December 1st, which was also happening at the same time as the curriculum committee meeting. So Dr. Kennedy was coming back and forth. And we met at the library, and the agenda was fairly simple. We covered a few items under special education and services. Today we voted in 8.2 for to fill the vacancy with an intern at this point for our speech and language therapist position. Apparently our district and many others have been having some issues with filling these positions for speech and language therapists. So we've had an ongoing issue with trying to find candidates to fill this full-time position. Under nursing and health services, our agreement with, I believe it's Concentric, is official, and we are scheduled to offer COVID testing out of the district's operations building on Mondays and Wednesdays from 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. This service is currently available only to students in the Wilson School District. The district also held its second vaccine clinic on December 2nd. Under mental health and counseling, the search and hiring processes are underway to fill the new school counselor positions at the elementary schools. And under equity and student experience, we discussed that now that the Educational Equity Policy 832 has finally passed, we began to discuss all the work that needs to be done now. One of the topics that we spent some time on was talking about the development of an equity council and a timeline for that. We would definitely like to have a broad representation for the council, since we hope that this body will inform and provide metrics for conducting an equity audit. So more information to come regarding the process to select or determine members of the council. As far as a timeline or a schedule, the Equity Council meeting schedule, once a timeline is determined, we would like to have a place or a site where the community can gain information about the meeting schedule, as well as some of the council's progress and data. That's my report. Our next student services meeting is scheduled for January 5th.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Dr. Feely?
Yeah, I just want to make one clarification regarding the affiliation agreement with Lebanon Valley College. That is for unpaid internships for speech language pathologists to come to our school district. One or more of those interns will be unpaid, under the supervision of our current speech department.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Faley. BCIU, Dr. Kennedy?
At last BCIU meeting, we said goodbye to the outgoing BCIU board meetings. We approved the 2022-23 calendar. We heard about Dr. Mark DeRocco, the executive director of the Association of the School Administrators, and how he joined the quarterly meeting of the COLA, the Committee on Legislative Action, and he gave updates on PASS's priorities in Harrisburg, and one of the things that they're still working on is cyber charter reform. The BCIU is celebrating 50 years, and they've had some really great fun facts, and one of the most interesting that I thought was that the Head Start program in Berks County began in 1965 with a summer program of 267 children with a federal budget of $42,000. Today, it serves 695 children in a center-based approach year-round with a federal grant of $6,736,599 and a state grant of $722,500. So times have changed. And I will start curriculum because, as Mrs. Casper said, I had to be in two places at once. I got to see the part of the curriculum committee where we were learning about how they're going to have a new flow chart, a new way of approving curriculum. And they asked for feedback on that, and we talked about it, and it's going to go through a feedback process with the principals and the administrators, and then they'll get a final flow chart. It's mostly works for more high school, middle school, but it will make sure that everybody gets a fair process through the process of wanting to get a new course through curriculum. And I'm going to pass it off to my partner in crime.
We had a presentation from Mrs. Mitzsteifer regarding Title I. We talked about what Title I is, how those funds are used. We also talked about a family reading night that's going to be held on December 9th at Cornwall Terrace, where the author is going to come. Each of the Title I children will receive a book and get to meet with the author. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. We again revisited the third grade field trip because the Lehigh Valley Zoo option is right during PSSA testing. That's really the only time they could get us in. We still can't get in Old Dry Row Farm. So currently, administration is looking at trying to do Zoo America in Hershey in lieu of the other two. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. And then we also talked, and this one fairly excited about, the National Merit Scholarship Tutoring Program. We were given a proposal wherein National Merit Scholar students would run tutoring sessions that could be face-to-face or through Google Meet. The process will be designed to, if it's through Google Meet, it'll be recorded to, of course, protect everyone's safety, but also so that there's a standardized process. And this might just be the beginning of student-led mentoring and tutoring programs. So I'm excited to see this one kind of take off.
And I'd like to thank the National Merit Scholars. They approached us right after they were announced here, and they're very excited about it. And this is from their time, and it's their idea. And I think it's a wonderful thing for our Wilson students.
Yeah, and our next meeting will be here on January 26th at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy and Mr. Schneider. Next is Berks EIT, Mrs. Schlossman.
There is no report for Berks EIT this evening.
Oh, she's not here. Thank you, Dr. Feely. Extracurricular. Our regularly scheduled meeting is supposed to take place next Monday at noon. It is going to be rescheduled to 4:30 and is actually going to be a joint meeting between extracurricular, finance, and facilities. Speaking of facilities, Mr. Negrini.
Meeting is next Monday, 4:30. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, finance.
Oh, yes, we have do this right one of these days. We had a finance committee meeting today. We went over basically a financial audit from Herbine and Company. Of course, as tradition is, it came back unqualified, which means it's a clean report. I know that confuses people, but it was a very good report, which will be at our next board meeting. You will get the full package that we reviewed today. We went over year-to-date October to 21 financial information. Being it was only 2 months of operations, even though it's in the 4 month, there's only 2 operations. A lot of the stuff was just very rough, primitive, from the standpoint that you really can't hang your hat on that. So it was just information purposes. We did have a presentation by the Food Service Department. As everyone knows, everyone's on free lunch and breakfast at least through the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. And what's interesting is the breakfast portion of it has really increased. The participation has really increased since it's free. So, I can understand that. There will be some questions about, next year, assuming that this program does end, and which it probably will, getting those people reacclimated that you have to pay for your lunch. So it should be an interesting month or two when it goes back into force. We looked at the general fund for the budget for this coming year, and right now it's pretty much in flux. We do have some hardships to face to make some decisions on certain situations. But right now, it looks like the tax increase is 4.2% for this year, which is the maximum we can go. And, that's just roughly what we've come up with, but that's based on what the needs are. Right now, it's a 4.2% increase for next year, 1.16 mils. We also looked the Wilson Education Foundation. We have a sharing partnership with them that we help offset some of the costs of their folks from the standpoint that do a lot of work. That will be coming forth to the board for approval next meeting, the last meeting of this year. And also, RFP, we're going to put out an RFP for lockbox services. Our current provider really doesn't want to be too much in this business, and they've kind of put some constraints on us. So we're opening it up to all the banks that have branches within our Wilson service area. So it will be limited to those banks that have branches here. So the elderly and people that need to go pay their bills in person can get a stamped receipt right away, and they won't have to, do anything more than then submit that for their rent abate or their homestead rebate. So that was pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. And legislative, Mr. Martin?
Yes. The big item that's going to be a concern to everybody right now is the fair funding lawsuit that's being, it's actually in its 3rd week now, where school districts throughout, I guess there's 500 school districts, 6 or 7 of them have petitioned to change the funding formula so that every student in the Commonwealth gets the same access to the same amount of funds, which, depending on, how you present the best and the worst case scenarios. Well, they presented that some of the school districts spend up to $30,000 per student, where other school districts pay substantially less than $10,000. So there's, once again, they're trying to prove a point. I don't think this is a very good situation for Wilson because it's going to lead to property tax reform one way or another. Whether that's good or bad, that's to be had, but they're looking at ways. There's, in the background of this, there's organizations looking at ways to implement if it gets approved, and there's going to be some fair funding program. There's ways of now looking at how to do that, and most of the plans that I've seen or discussed are doing away with property taxes to a degree. So I'm not sure where this is going to go. The state doesn't require, under the current Pennsylvania law, is required to provide education. Doesn't say what type of education you're supposed to get. Is it supposed to be the Cadillac or the Chevy? And that's what they're debating. What does that terminology mean? So I just want to, that's a major item coming up. There are some third readings of, spoke to one of our representatives, there's some third readings on a couple of bills. Senate Bill number 1 deals with charter reform. That third reading is going to be December 13th, and it's rather lengthy. It makes some more financial reporting things. So there's a lot of things in it. There's pros and cons to it, and we'll see how that goes. There's also, let's see, Senate Bill 846 is going to be in its third reading, and that's to do away with mandatory masks, that a parent will have the right to opt out if they choose to do so, and will limit the regulators, when I say regulators, health organizations from imposing mandates. So that's also in its third reading. And then there are also, and we talked about this, Senate Bill 937 is with the immunization. Once again, there's going to be some, well, I shouldn't say it's in its third reading. That's to do away any state organization or political subdivision or anybody in that nature cannot enforce immunization, and that cannot be a requirement for employment. And I think the last thing that I talked about was the third reading for the House Bill 1332 deals with school districts posting the curriculum online for access to everyone to see. And that's pretty much it, Ms. President.
Thank you. Human Resources, Mr. Hart.
I have no report.
Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
Thank you. I just have a couple items. First, the Wilson School District recently ran a thought exchange to gather thoughts from our community about the question, what do students need to know and be able to do when they leave the Wilson School District? The results of that exchange can be found on our district website under the announcements section, and we will be using the results of the exchange to continue to guide our work as we develop the profile of a Wilson graduate. So we just want to thank everyone who participated in that exchange. We were pleased to welcome representatives from the Pennsylvania Department of Education at our pediatric vaccine clinic held last Thursday. Deputy Secretary Dr. Sherry Smith and Communications Director Casey Smith attended the event to thank Esterbrook Pharmacy, our local healthcare professionals, school administration, students, and families for working together to make the clinic possible. And finally, we would like to invite our community to join us for our support staff job fair. That event will be held on Wednesday, December 15th from 4 to 6 p.m. right here in this boardroom. We will be hiring for food service workers, special education paraprofessionals, bus and van drivers, custodial staff, crossing guards, bus aides, and preschool teachers and assistant teachers. So please be sure to spread the word about that event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Troutman. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Yes, thank you. The Education Foundation met on November 19th. I was unable to attend the meeting due to another commitment, but it was an uplifting meeting. There were a few guests demonstrating some of the great impacts that the WEF has across our district. So I'm going to do a little commercial here, and someone took some great notes, so I'm going to read. I apologize for that. Mrs. Karen Troutman introduced her honors intern, Kamari Clark, who works in the Public Relations Department 3 mornings a week. And Ms. Clark noted that she creates media pages and graphic projects, posts for social media, and updates the newspaper board. And we're all proud of the honors internship program and the fact that the WEF, the Ed Foundation, had a lot of involvement in the development of it. So it's something that the WEF is very proud of. The internship program is coordinated by Steph Wagner and is mainly offered to juniors and seniors. It started with 50 students and now has grown to 150. Last year, it even ran during COVID. Internships provide students with life skills and an opportunity to experience career fields to help in the decision-making process on the right fit before college. Ms. Troutman views interns like a member of her own department and believes they have an advantage during college, and she hopes to expand the program. And with the help of the PTOs, is evaluating graduate profiles to help make students career and life ready. So it's wonderful, great news. So thank you, Karen, for all that great work. And for more information, interns can get credit and grade honors weight, and some companies like Morgan Corporation pick up students and pay for work and travel time. I work for Morgan Corporation, and I did meet one of our welders that was there. Fantastic young man, and welding jobs pay a lot of money, and it's a great thing, seeing the school bus for Wilson go all the way down to Morgantown and drop off and pick people up. Wilson has met with the community members, parents, to discuss what skills they want their kids to have, and when they graduate, we create an opportunity for every child. Our goal is for children to build confidence, have educational and social experiences, and gain life skills in communication, writing, and speaking. For skills, we still offer a financial literacy class, behind-the-wheel education, and looking at adding community service. So Molly Mack said the WEF would also like to help support the internship program, and that Wilson is doing a great job in preparing students. So thanks to the Ed Foundation for all that good work. Another guest was Monica Lawrence, who's one of our autistic support teachers here at Wilson. And Mrs. Lawrence introduced her students, Sam Wolf, Emilian Parham, and John Del Corrales, and spoke about peer buddies activities. The students also shared stories about their favorite trips and what they do and what they enjoy doing with their buddies. She's lucky to have mature students helping with the program, and they can participate through club or internship. The students were recently recognized also in the Reading Eagle. Some of their trips include trips to Weiss, which basically are using an alphabetical letter worksheet to find different foods, and index cards with food costs. They go bowling, they go to the firehouse to learn about safety, fire safety, and go on trucks. They go to Wilson football games, which they didn't do this year because of COVID, but they're looking forward to doing it next year. Friendsgiving, mall trip in December, and fall carnivals. So all the funds that the WEF graciously gets from the community goes to programs like this. And when you look at if anyone has a child with autism, just sometimes going to a football game is a major challenge. So the more these kids can get out, the better. A couple of things with some challenges that this Wilson School District has right now is finding teachers. So some of the things and topics that came up in the last Ed Foundation meeting was how maybe the Ed Foundation can help with improving, maybe finding some teachers that were Wilson students at one point, and maybe looking into some sort of signing bonuses if you were a Wilson student and want to come back to Wilson, which I think would be a great thing. So our legal team is looking into whether we can do that or not. And again, it's just a so far a topic of discussion, and we'll learn more. So a couple of other things. Be on the lookout for, I can't announce exactly what it is, but there's a fun spring fundraiser announcement coming in January. I don't want to steal any thunder. And then there's also, just in general, with all the great things that the Ed Foundation does, there's end-of-year fundraising opportunities and sponsorship. So if you want to learn more about that stuff, you can go to the Wilson website or reach out to Molly Mack. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Technology, Mr. Schneider.
Yes, we met today. We talked about some PD things that are occurring for teachers. Some of it's just change in requirements from the state from one measure to another. We also talked about the parent-teacher conferences that were just held for the elementary students, and some upcoming PD involving Rachel's Challenge. We talked about wireless upgrades for the high school and the middle school as a process that they've started working on, partially because of supply chain, and to get it, and then to start working through the process of upgrading. We got a new outdoor camera for the stadium. It was free, and so the media club will still do the football games, but now we'll be able to, if we want, live stream anything else that occurs in the stadium, which is pretty neat. We got a new digital sign, outside of Whitfield, which is pretty exciting. Phone lines are going away. Phone companies aren't replacing the lines, the copper lines, so we're starting to look at a demo for cellular services because it's just the direction technology is moving. We talked about classroom projection, how that's done, and we are demoing and some interactive panels. So it would be like a TV, but you could touch it and do things on it, and it would have some whiteboard functions and stuff as well. We got an update on our spam email security to try and keep spam and malware and all that from getting emailed from the district. We talked about upgrades to server protection, and then lastly, we talked about the app development. We were shown a couple two different companies to look at, and just had some discussion of what direction we want to go going forward. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Student outreach, Ms. Maddie Negrini.
So first of all, there's a lot going on with Wilson High School's choir. This past Friday, they booked their first gig for the select and treble choirs, and they caroled at the Sailor House in West Reading by singing holiday carols. And additionally, all the choirs, all three of them, have an upcoming holiday concert on December 21st. Winter sports have officially started, and many of the teams from Wilson will be kicking off their season this Friday, competing in various matches and games. And then lastly, Wilson Minithon has their annual Kids Night Out event on Friday, December 17th from 5:30 to 9. Kids can come to the high school and spend time with the Minithon captains, enjoying crafts, movies, and other holiday activities, and all proceeds go directly to Minithon's overall total that they are raising for their thon in February. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moravich?
No report.
Okay. Public participation on non-agenda items. Mr. Moravich, we do have some. That's okay.
Sorry. I pulled up the First Amendment case. Pursuant to Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules, and Board Policy, the following are the rules of public participation. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answer, but instead is an opportunity to offer comments on matters that are or may come before the board. All comments should be directed to the board as a whole. Clapping, calling out, or cheering is not permitted, nor is audience conversations. Individuals should not approach the board tables. Individuals shall make the comments from the speaker's podium. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per individual. Any persons making a threat of violence may be removed from the meeting and may be cited by local police. And again, the policies are outlined. Policy 903 is in board docs on the board website.
Thank you, Mr. Moravich. First, Val Delp, Health and Safety Plan.
Good evening. In light of recent rulings in the PA courts on the lack of authority of our health secretary on the masking mandate, I'm asking we revisit the health and safety plan. Where do we currently stand on the CDC transmission tables? I haven't seen any updates or progress on that since that was put in place. And without the mandate, it's now completely in the board's hands, and I'd like you to reconsider how the negative effects of masking far outweigh the positive. Tonight I'm focusing on just one of those negative effects, a severe drop in cognitive development in young children. In a study completed by Brown University scientists published on November 26, 2021, it was concluded that there has been a 23% drop in 3 key cognitive tests from 2018 to 2021 in children ages 0 to 5. The tests were the Early Learning Composite, Verbal Development Quotient, and Nonverbal Development Quotient. The ELC is equivalent to an IQ score derived from fine motor, visual reception, receptive and expressive language scales, and the 2 development quotients measure how well a child is maturing in language skills and other skills. The report adds that masks worn in public settings and in school or daycare may impact a range of early developing skills, such as attachment, facial processing, and socioeconomic processing. And for those of you who are champions of social emotional learning, I would think this would be a major concern for you. I can personally attest with my previous experience working with 3-year-olds in early childhood education versus the behavior I'm seeing in my 3-year-old daughter right now, there is an enormous difference. I enrolled her in preschool this fall when she turned 3 because I wanted her to develop a foundation in social skills and communication skills. And sadly, I don't know that she is getting much of that wearing a mask all day. Recently, she had picture day, and when we showed her her class photo, she couldn't recognize or identify any of her classmates with no masks on. She talks about some of them by name at home, but when asked to point them out in the picture, she could not do it. Explain how she is supposed to connect with other kids and progress with her social and emotional development when she can't see their faces. Her teacher even says, my daughter sometimes looks at her with a blank stare. She is very expressive at home, sometimes too much. So for her to be emotionless or unable to make a connection while in school with a mask on all day is very troubling to me. You should be asking yourselves, what effect will this have on the future of our society? If kids are missing out on these crucial years of social and emotional skills, how effective will teaching them any subject matter in K through 12 become with your continued masking protocol? The ripple effects of this could set our entire country back in education over the next couple of decades. It's way past the right time to unmask our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we do have plans in the future to readdress the health and safety plan as we had previously scheduled.
Yeah, I mean, you need a law degree to figure it out, but Commonwealth Court said that the Department of Health did not have the authority. There would have been an automatic supersedious that would have continued until because there was an appeal by the governor's office. And then that supersedious got lifted by a motion before one Commonwealth Court judge, but then the Supreme Court now reinstated the supersedious and said that it will decide it after it hears argument, which I believe is Wednesday. So we're back to not having any authority right now. That makes sense.
So in our health and safety plan, though, Dr. Fadley, that was done before the mask mandate, and we will revisit our health and safety plan.
Our health and safety plan calls for a review at the 6-month point, and we do plan on reviewing that health and safety plan with our board to receive any, to share any updates that we know at that time, and that is scheduled for the middle of January.
Thank you. Next is Rick Crump, CRT Equity.
You guys allowed to have this book in here? I didn't think this would be allowed in here. I make it a point to tell the truth before it's popular. So with that in mind, I want to get this on the record, that the CRT policy masquerading under the title of equity that you passed will in time be proven to be a discriminatory policy to indoctrinate our children in the Marxist ideology that it's based on. To the 2 board members that voted against the policy, I thank you for holding to the premise of our founding fathers that all men are created equal, not to be discriminated against through the preferential and punitive treatment based on religion, race, ethnicity, sex, and the other factors that CRT equity festers. We, the parents and the residents of the Wilson community, will keep a watchful eye, ready to protect our children, especially after tonight's election. We will advocate from this podium, we will expose the lies, we will file the lawsuits as necessary, and we will work diligently to replace supporters of this destructive policy in the next board election.
Okay, thank you. Tammy Keener, non-agenda. Okay. Brian Shavinsky, election and 903 policy for public comment.
Good evening. To start out with the 903 community public participation, I know there was a recent ruling by a federal court challenging that in Pennsbury School District in Bucks County, and I didn't know if that was going to affect and update our policy to deal with that or not. I'd like that to be reviewed. The community, for the election, let their voices be heard by voting to re-elect our school board last month. They had a total count of votes of over 17,000. That was over 60% of the community supported our existing board and re-elected them. That's well above a simple majority. Congratulations, Dr. Amy Kennedy, Steph Kotcher, Sean McRae, and Mr. Ed Case. It was a doozy of an election. We had a gamut of campaign types, ones with local ties and funding, and ones that were bankrolled by outside groups. So many in the community stepped up and did the three simple things that I recommended and asked. That was to show up here or send emails to communicate with the board. They voted at the ballot box to let their voices be heard, and they rejected groups that promote and/or cannot denounce extremists. Where do we go from here? I think it's simple to continue those three steps and continue to connect with our neighbors, talk with them, and come to a common ground so we can find and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy Keener, non-agenda.
Hi, good evening again. I have so much to say and very little time you give us. But I'm going to be speaking tonight on this project that you want to do, that you intend on starting next month, I do believe. I can't imagine that all of you have blinders on and that you don't see the inflation that this administration, the current administration that we're going under, has inflicted upon the American people over the last 11 months. A study came out on December 3rd, and it was announced that inflation in November of 2021 has risen 4.9%. That's the highest in 31 years. You can't go to the grocery store and get what you could get 11 months ago without seeing it. You can't go to the gas pump without seeing it. So I don't know, have any of you noticed this? And if you haven't, then maybe you make way too much money, or perhaps you have somebody doing your shopping for you or your gas tank for you. I am not at all pleased with any of you, except Mr. Martin, of course. You say you don't want to interject politics and that it's not to be involved here. However, your inflation chart that you're using on the project is from the greatest economic recovery that we've ever seen in the history of our country, and that is from 2017 to 2020. So you're showing false information to the public, and you're stating that we don't have inflation and that it's okay for us to go ahead and build this building when you plan and your whole agenda, your basis of your inflation chart is based on the greatest economy we've ever had under President Trump's administration. Okay, I do believe that you need to revisit this because you use politics when it's convenient for your agenda. Do you really think that people are that stupid? That they won't notice that their property taxes are going to increase 38% over the next 5 years? You have a wish list, and you use our wallets to fulfill your wish list. This has to stop. You need to put out a proposal, a new proposal to the public, and you need to correct the inflation chart. You need to include one that includes this year's inflation. This is the highest inflation we have seen in 31 years. This is ridiculous. The American people, the people of Wilson School District, can no longer tolerate this. I also have a problem. I'm a veteran. I support my country. I fought for my country. I don't want to see any flag embedded in this school except for the American flag. Those people came from other countries here, immigrated here to our country for a better life and for our dream.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry. If you continue with that, I have a petition that I have started.
Ms. Keener, please.
From the district on removing any flag but the American flag.
Thank you.
Jeff Giannakovo, Policy 903, Update on Equity Policy.
Tell Jeff she used 20 seconds this time.
So, just before I begin, I can't help but notice that the newly installed president tonight displayed hypocrisy when the community member, a few before me, called each board member, re-elected board member out by name. There was no bang of the gavel. To call a board member out by name is actually a violation of policy. Yet you were ready to bang the gavel when there was a giggle outburst in the audience. Hypocritical. I want to talk about policy 903. In the proposed amendment to the policy, quote, participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation if applicable. What exactly is the purpose of announcing which groups any one community member may or may not be affiliated with? Some might say this is an attempt to quell free speech. People like me would say with 100% certainty that this is your attempt to scare reasonable people away from this podium. It's a major benefit to the power of the seat and the policies you create to control and manipulate the outcomes you desire. As this reads right now, one is left with the impression that the presiding officer, under their sole discretion, may actually be permitted to silence community members simply because of which groups they may or may not be affiliated with. Further, who decides which groups are good, which groups are bad? Is our board really seeking to go down this road? I find it hard to believe that 4 newly re-elected members actually had the gall with that policy up on the board at the last meeting to swear on the oath of Constitution both to our Republic and Commonwealth tonight. Suppose a list of group affiliations deemed not worthy is created and its members attempt to publicly speak here. That would be a direct violation of their civil rights. How exactly does this board or presiding officer arrive at the meeting of the burden of proof to stomp on the civil liberties of stakeholders in Wilson School District? How many dollars in legal fees, investigations, and the like will you expend to prove the community is one of the baddies that you don't like? Or will you continue to get your burden of proof from social media and others who would manipulate narrative to libel people like me, thereby connecting this board to their libelous actions, exposing this board to further litigation? Exactly how big is the budget? In other words, how many $190 lawyer hours do you want to pay for? It's really disturbing that the body would even consider adding this provision to the policy. And we've often heard in this room that you welcome thoughts from all sides, but really, when we see you in action, and that's all this community needs to do, read that board, read the policies, come to the meetings, listen to the words, watch the actions, and you'll see this is nothing but hypocrisy. To keep people away from speaking because they're supposedly affiliated with groups that you don't like, under no due process, under no proof of burden of proof at all, is nothing but fascism.
Okay. That is the end of public participation.
If I may, I don't interpret it that way. I would imagine, and maybe you can help me out.
Let's read it right now.
Excuse me, that's,
Mr.
Case is
If I could
talking.
finish my comments for a second.
With all due respect, this is not supposed to be.
Mr. Case is talking.
I think we were done with public participation, and typically at this point, board members talk. Mike Martin will talk for 30 minutes at this point in time, so I'm going to take a couple of minutes. But my interpretation of that is that if you're from a township or the PTO, that you would address or announce yourself from that group because you have a certain agenda based on what's happening with the school board. I don't see our board at all shutting anybody down for any particular group whatsoever. Hasn't happened. I don't think it would happen, and you would be 100% right about the civil liberties being trampled on if that did happen, which it's not. So if there's something you want to add about that and explain the policy.
Yeah, I'd like to address just, I believe you're referencing policy 903. And policy 903 came to the board for first reading at the last board meeting. And since that board meeting, there was a ruling that came out of the Commonwealth Court, I believe.
Federal court.
Federal
Eastern
court.
District.
That indicated that an area school district was violating individuals' rights at the microphone. So I pulled that from the agenda and asked our legal department to make sure that before we bring it back, that we were adhering to the federal ruling in terms of making sure that people are afforded their rights under the First Amendment. of our Constitution. So the reason it's not on the agenda this evening is because I asked that it be pulled for legal review based on that federal ruling out of an area school district.
Thank you. Any other business from the board?
Mr. President, I need my 30 minutes. So I have like 5 or 6 items. I just want to, I'll start off with the 903 policy, which has already been addressed. I think it can be tweaked, and we'll leave it go at that. At the last meeting, the majority of the board adopted equity policy 832, and I objected to the word shall in several areas. And I was asked to rewrite it on the spot, which I couldn't do. But I did rewrite it. I did rewrite the equity definition, which unfortunately didn't get to the full board yet. It's my understanding the superintendent will put it in the update, but I did rewrite it, and I think it should be acceptable to the board, and hopefully the board will agree to put that on the agenda. So shall is a legal definition, which means you will obey, okay? And if you don't, you're in violation of law. So I thought that was a little stark on that. So anyway, I rewrote it, so we'll see. It's supposed to go out on the board update, I guess on Friday. Also, at the last meeting, I mentioned about this special needs student over at West that has been attacking teachers, spitting, biting, clawing, and everything. I did speak to the superintendent on that, and although I guess the Department of Education has a different viewpoint of what a dangerous student is, I still believe that student is dangerous, and I didn't see the update yet. Maybe it'll be in this Friday's update, but that student really needs to be removed from the school district. Let's see here. I talked about that. I did want to talk about this face mask policy just in general. The states shouldn't have to elect rules not to do something. But the abuse of the system, the medical system right now, has caused states to have to vote saying it's a parent's right to decide. So this really shouldn't be happening. We're out of sync somewhere along the line, and that's why you see some of these things coming through our state house as well as other states. And I think that's unfortunate when your recommendations become law. So that's where the confusion's coming in. That's why the state's getting involved. And I think the outcome eventually, hopefully, will be that everybody understands the difference between recommendation and a law. And the other thing, I have some other things, but I've been told I got to keep this short tonight because there's a good football game on. The only other item I have is we've been banning people from the property of the school district. And I don't know if we're abusing that or not. Some people deserve it, obviously, but I still would like to have a list of all the people that we have sent letters through our attorneys not to step foot in this property over the last 5 years, because I want to make sure we're not abusing that. And I hope that list will be in the update come Friday. And I may not be at the meeting, at the next meeting, which is our Christmas meeting, so I'm going to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and God bless you all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin. Other board business? Oh, Dr. Faley?
Yeah, I'd just like to make one comment. I had the opportunity to attend the musical production of James and the Giant Peach with my wife and a 10-year-old and 3-year-old. I guess it's been a couple weeks ago. And I just want to commend the students for the very fine performance that they presented to our community. I can tell you that it's not often that you see a production performed at that high a quality in a high school. And they do a tremendous job. They put in a lot of hard work. And I'm just very thankful for the opportunity to have a date night. But with my wife and children, it was very enjoyable. So thank you to all of those students and to the adults and teachers involved in that process.
Other business? Okay, motion to adjourn the meeting.
McCray.
Mr. McCray, second? Mr. Martin? Adjourned.